The topic we're going to talk about today are the bushfires, which seem to be a regular occurrence. It feels like they come up every year. Tell me some of the history of the bushfires and how you go about dealing with them.
Yeah, well, southeastern Australia, from a biology, ecology perspective, it's an absolute boom and bust environment. So the boom is when you get the really wet years, flood years. That's where you get the big boom in water resource, big boom in biology and ecology response. But then the bust is the extreme dry and drought. And that is not new. That has always been a feature of this landscape. What we're experiencing now with climate change is that the booms are more extreme and the busts are more extreme. We are in 2026 and we've had 2 failed winters and springs. I would say that we're heading into our 3rd year of drought, and that's starting to put our water resource under pressure. Obviously, we've done a lot of work to try to smooth out those boom and busts in terms of our water security management. However, we continue to move into these uncharted waters.
The challenge we have across the water sector around the world is we've built infrastructure that is to deal with environmental volatility, weather changes. If you've got these extreme droughts, you need enormous reservoirs to catch that water then, so that in the 3-4 years later, you'll be able to deal with it. But we generally don't have those assets. All right, let's talk about the bushfires. Walk me through a bushfire event, how it appears, what sorts of things you do, how you manage that circumstance.
You really have to go back a couple of years when it basically stopped raining. And so what's happened in the catchment? You had the wet years, you get a really strong response in terms of undergrowth in the forest, but also grass. So there's a lot of what we call fuel load right across the landscape, 2 very dry winters and springs. So the environment is in a highly volatile state. So what do you need? You need an ignition source and you need wind. And all of a sudden, a fire can run very quickly, very aggressively across the landscape. So this summer has been so hot in Australia, like crazy hot. We got this really long heat wave just recently, and it culminated in what was forecast under the fire preparedness forecasting as a catastrophic fire risk day. So this is early January. We had days 43, 45, 45, 47, 48 centigrade temperatures back to back. The big issue with bushfires is they run on the wind change. The big movement and devastation of fire always occurs on a strong wind change. So the weather on the 9th of January was forecast to have that really strong wind change in the afternoon. And as it turns out, there was an ignition source, and that's actually under investigation by police. It's not clear how that fire actually started.
Surely people aren't stupid enough to go and deliberately start these fires, are they?
Now, I don't know about this event. I understand that's still subject to investigation, but dry lightning is a major source of ignition for these fires. There's a thing called the Vic Emergency app. It's standard practice for everyone to subscribe to the Vic Emergency app. You go into the app, you set your watch zones, and in your watch zones, it sends you alerts. So it'll ping you to tell you there's something. That's how many people find out. We have our incident team stood up at this time, so they're constantly monitoring the operating environment. So they are watching the Country Fire Authority website, they're watching the Vic Emergency website, so they know very early if there's a particular issue. And so we could see that there was a fire over to the west. We knew that the wind was coming from the west, but it was sort of heading more towards the east and a bit to the south. And we were worried about that. It was actually heading towards one of our water treatment plants. Now, that water treatment plant does have water curtain defenses. It's like a curtain spray from above to protect the structure of the building in the event the fire comes. But many of these things haven't always been tested in anger. We were also thinking about engaging with the firefighters about, could we have a helicopter drop some retardant or drop something to protect? But then all of a sudden, bang, the fire moved straight through 100k an hour winds, took the fire right across a whole town called Harcourt, relatively small town. It's a famous area for growing wine grapes and growing apples, producing cider, but it was a devastating direct hit on that town. 54 homes absolutely razed to the ground, major businesses impacted, a lot of rural impacts as well.
This must be catastrophic for your customers. How are some of them coping, and what can you do to support them?
We've taken an internal decision that we will self-fund, and bearing in mind we're a 100% customer-funded business, we will effectively work with those directly affected customers to give them bill relief on their customer water bills. Tomorrow, the rural bills will go out. We are giving a $300 credit on those bills just to soften the blow of getting a water bill at a time when you're under duress. In terms of the urban bills, we've got a big road there, because if you think about losing your home, you've got fixed charges in your water bill and variable charges on your water bill. Now, many of these people don't actually have insurance, so we will be providing bill relief for those customers who've lost their home. We're not going to send them a water bill. We're going to absorb that in the short run. We've got a pretty mature, what we call our Colliban Assist program, and we'll roll that out to anyone that needs help.